So, as you can see, there is a small adjustment on the title, Multilingualism in the EU after Brexit or not, because we don't know what happens. This topic was settled, let's say, 9 months ago, and at that time it seemed that everything will go in one direction, but nowadays nobody knows. So, challenges and opportunities. We are in the multilingual section, so I will use more than one language, and just to have a bit of fun, mi ŝanĝas lingvon nun. Do, saluton. La titolo estas Multilinguismo en la Europa Unio post Brit eliro aŭ ne. Defioj kaj oportunoj. Mi estas profesoro en la Universitato de Amsterdamo kaj mi instruas la lingvon kaj kulturon de Esperanto, inter alie. Mi estas italo, mi ne estas nederlandano, mi estas italo, mi venas de Italio, kaj mia historio, persona historio, estas sufiĉe interesa. Do, li estas mia patro, Romualdo, kaj ankaŭ li venas de Italio. Li parolas denaske, tio signifas kie li estas infano. Mi estas plenkreskulo, infano. Li estis infano, li parolis la venetan. La veneta estas minoritata lingvo de la regiono de Venecio, nord-oriente de Italio, kaj la itala. Do, li estas du lingvulo. Li parolis du lingvoj kiel infano. Ŝi estas mia patrino Elisabeth. Ŝi ankaŭ venas de Italio, sed ŝi ne parolis kiel infano la italan. Ŝi parolis kaj parolas denaske la germanan, ĉar ŝi venas de Sud-Tirolo, kiu estas regiono proxime alla landlimo kun Aŭstrio. Minoritato kiu parolas la germana loĝas en tiu regiono. Sed ŝi ne parolas la tirolan dialekton, ŝi parolas la norman alt-germanan. Do, mi havis 3 lingvojn, kiam mi estis infano. Do, mia familio venas de unu ŝtato, Italio, sed almenaŭ 2 nacioj, la itala nazio kaj la, ni diru, aŭstria nazio, kaj efektive estas ankaŭ la minoritata identeco de la veneta kaj pli kaj pli kaj pli. Do, mi estas la filo de 2 landlimoj. Unu estas landlimo inter Italio kaj Aŭstrio, kaj la alia estas la landlimo inter Italio kaj Slovenio. Do, multaj lingvoj en mia larĝa familio, mia granda familio, estas parolataj. Ankaŭ la kroata, la slovena, multaj. Do, estis jam babelo. Kiam mi estis adolescanto, do, estas infano, plenkreskulo, kaj en la mezo estas adolescanto. Kiam mi estis adolescanto, mi inventis lingvojn por rolludi en fantastaj landoj. Fantastaj landoj estas landoj kun drakoj, elfoj, gigantoj, monstroj, kaj kompreneble orkoj parolas tre malbelan lingvon. Kaj do mi inventis malbelan lingvon por doni sincerecon, realecon alla fantastaj mondoj. Do mi ĉiam inventis lingvojn. Kai mi legis la romanojn de Tolkien kiam mi aĝis 12. 12. Tio estas la kovrilo de la Esperanto eldono de The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, la mastro de ringoj, la 2 turegoj. Multaj homoj scias ke la juna Tolkien estis esperantisto. Fakte li diris en la Esperanto Kongreso en Oxfordo 1930. Personally, I am a believer in an artificial language. At any rate for Europe, a believer that is, in its desirability, as the one thing antecedently necessary for uniting Europe, before it is swallowed by non-Europe. Also, I particularly like Esperanto, which is a description of the ideal artificial language, but my concern is not with that kind of artificial language at all. Kio okazis poste? Tiu fenomeno Esperanto estis por mi hobio, parto de mia libera tempo. Sed mi legis tiun faman libron de Umberto Eco, la itala semiologo, La serciado della perfecta lingua, en la itala la ricerca della lingua perfetta. Kai en tiu libro Umberto Eco parolas pri Esperanto. Kai estas du argumentoi, unu argumento por, unu argumento mal por au contrau Esperanto, por Europo, en Europo. La argumento por estas, en la itala, se la tendenza all'unificazione europea va di pari passo con la tendenza alla moltiplicazione delle lingue, l'unica soluzione possibile sta nella adozione piena di una lingua europea veicolare. La argumento contrau malpor estas la egoismo de la registaroi, en la itala l'egoismo dei governi. Kai danke l'Esperanto mi fine venis al Nederlando kai igis professoro. Do, mi ne vera estas poligloto, pardonu. Mi estas lingvisto kai interlingvisto. Do, por academia nivelo, la alta nivelo, miei lingvoi estas nur 3. La itala, prescau denasca, kai mi usas la italan ancau en mia familio, con mia edzino, mia filo kai filino. La angla, cefe academie, kai Esperanto, academie, kai amicetse. Crome mi havas ian conon de la Nederlanda, la Franza, la Germana, kai la Hispana. Do, ne multai lingvoi. All right. To Brexit or not to Brexit? This is the question. So, I would like to discuss with you two pictures of the Brexit. The first one is by people who are Brexiteers. They favorite Brexit, and it was taken by a website to support Brexit. You see, there is Britain with chains, and the chains are European. So the idea they have is that they are surrounded. So there is a nation, which is British nation, which is already debatable if there is a nation or not, and it is surrounded like in a war by something which is not a nation, because European Union is not a nation, it's something different. And the analogy they have is that European Union is like an empire. It's something that is against nationalities. This is the second picture from BBC, actually, from people who are against Brexit. And it was taken on the border between Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. You see here. And you can see here, listen to our voices, respect our vote, no EU frontier in Ireland. Border communities against Brexit. So, the point is, and of course there is also an advertisement for a coffee. Okay. The point is that this is abstract, and this is general. It's on a national level, from national and the European level. While this one is very, very local. It is very concrete because there are communities that are talking about. So, in my view, the problem is that they are talking on different levels. In a sense, both have rights, and they say something true and something not so true. Okay? And that's the problem. They cannot talk one to the other because they talk about different things. Okay, what will happen? I'm not a magician, I'm sorry. So, I don't know. Nobody really knows. I don't think that even Brexiteers know now. It was a process that was started in a way, and then it became completely out of control. So, maybe I will disappoint you, but I have not a solution. But I think it's a good topic in order to discuss what does it mean to have a European Union, a multilingual continent, and Europe in general, and how to foster multilingualism in this angle of the world. Because we are speaking in a polyglot gathering, and so I think I take for granted that all of you are in favor of multilingualism. Otherwise, you are not polyglots. Or even not linguists like me. Because linguists, you know, if you understood what I've said before, I'm a linguist, I'm not really polyglot. Why? Because linguists talk about things they do not know, which are languages. We do not speak languages, we like to talk about languages. We like the meta level, not the real level, the object level, while polyglots like to use languages in concrete settings. So this is the main difference. So I wanted to give to you an overview of the main points of the history of the European Union project in order to understand why we went to this point. So the section 3 is the two souls behind the European Union project. Antau, mal antau. Alta, mal alta. Por, mal por. Okay, let me use a metaphor. If the moon were Nazism, which is a fact, Nazism exists like the moon, you cannot say that the moon does not exist. Okay, it does exist. You have two faces. One is the light side and the other is the dark side. Okay? So the light side is national patriotism. I'm proud to be an Italian. I like my language, I like my culture, in particular food, I should say, coffee, and it's okay. This does not mean that if you have another culture, I don't like you. Simply we are different, but we can share things. The dark side is chauvinism, and that means that because of some ethnicity or maybe cultural things, I think by default to be superior compared to non-Italians. This is the bad side. So, what I'm arguing now, and I know that it is really debatable in this moment, I don't think the Nazism per se is completely wrong or is completely bad. There are two sides. And I think that we have to have more of the light side in order to defeat the dark side. Okay? And if you think I'm a fan of Star Wars, yes, I'm on. So, I was talking to you that there are two souls, and these two souls can be represented by the 6 founders of the European Union as a vision, as an ideal. 3 of them were Catholic, and the other 3 were Social Democrats. You have Robert Schuman from France, Konrad Adenauer from Germany, Alcide de Gasperi from Italy, but really he comes from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, politically speaking. Why? Because his first mandate as a member of parliament was in the Austrian Empire in Trento. So his political attitude was not completely Italian. Then other 3, Altiero Spinelli, Ernesto Rossi, Eugenio Colorni, 3 Italians. And what made them Together was the consciousness that war comes from the bad side of Nazism. So, see, Robert Schuman, Konrad Adenauer, and Alcide De Gasperi were Catholics, while Altiero Spinelli, Ernesto Rossi, and Eugenio Colorni were Social Democrats. So, they were together for the goal, but not for the how to go, for the way, how to go. So to reach the goal, that was not the same thinking by the two groups. And because of this mismatch, we are now in the situation of Brexit and other things, let's say. Okay, everything started with the Westphalian Peace in 1648. What happened then? And that moment, they solved the governments of the main European countries, sat on a table and said, how can we avoid another terrible war? Because they were going out of the 30 years war. 30 years of war. And that war was based on two things. Power, economy, but from an ideal point of view, the religious differences. Mainly there was Catholics against Protestants. So that was one of the forces that moved the people to kill one to the other. And they wanted not to have any more a religious war in Europe. So, on a table, the governments, and that means kings and queens at that time mainly, they agreed on two things. States cannot mix in the things internal of each state. So, in my home, I'm free to do whatever I want. I do not have to ask permission to you. But on the street, we have to find a gentleman agreement. So that's why we sit on the table and we are not shooting one the other. Okay, that was the idea. And that worked for centuries. That was the starting point of modern nationalism. In my country, my citizens should obey me as a king. So they should be uniformed from a religious point of view, ethnic point of view, and linguistic point of view. That's why national states tend to be monolingual officially. If you remember, there were some groups that had to move because of that. For example, the Huguenots. There were Protestants in France and they had to go to the Netherlands because they were Protestants. And so after that peace, they say, okay, you're a Protestant, please go away or we will, you have to convert. That was the idea, okay? In order to disentangle this powerful energy of religion as a way to foster wars. Of course, the 6 founders of the European Union project lived in the first half of the 20th century. And that was the time of totalitarianisms, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, and so on. So they wanted to go beyond the Westphalian regime. And the only way is to have as a goal a pan-European federation. But here, okay, they say, okay, European federation, yes, but how? Quia maniere? How? The point is that Catholics and Social Democrats have a different conception of sovereignty. For the Catholics, Sovereignty is in the people's will. People should be educated to the good values that are behind the European tradition. For the Social Democrats, the sovereignty is not particularly on the people, on the people's shoulder, but on social justice. And social justice can be obtained only through law, through clear laws that can also educate people to be good citizens, starting from constitutions. So this is very simplifying schema, and I beg your pardon if you are an expert in political science, because this is really oversimplifying, but we do not have 3 weeks to do that, okay? That's why. And so on the left you see the Catholics, and on the right you see the Social Democrats. The two principles that guide the two groups are different. The Catholics are guided by the principle of subsidiarity, which became very popular, and if you want, I spoil the end of the story. The Catholics won. All the time we listen in the mantra of European Union, the principle of subsidiarity. That was not invented by the European Union. That was invented by the Pope in an encyclic, which was called Quadrigesimo Anno, in Latin, of course, because Latin is the official language of Vatican. And what does it mean? It means that, and that papal law was done in 1931, and in that moment, he said, the Pope said, you should not give too much power to the states, to the governments, because the states can become totalitarianistic. Yes. 1931, remember the date. So the state should only be the guarantor, how to guarantee social lives. Social life is done for real by family, which is the most important nucleus of society, and from the grouping of families in associations, churches, non-governmental association, and so on. So, for example, taking care of education, taking care of the poor is not something that should be done directly from the state. It should be done by the churches. It should be done by associations. Okay, this is the idea of subsidiarity. For the Social Democrats, the state is important. And so they have this principle of welfare. Welfare means that the state has to take care of the poor. It should level all the differences so every citizen is on the same foot when starting the competition in the market. You see, this is a very big difference. Peace is based on two different principles. For the Catholics, peace is based on behavior, public behavior, fair public behavior by the representatives, because they have inside themselves morality, because they are good Christians, because they are good Catholic, of course. While for the Social Democrats, peace is based on the respect of human rights. Human rights are laws, are principles not inside your heart, but they are on paper, they are on constitutions, they are on tractates. So it's completely different. How to improve society? For the Catholics, society is improved step by step, not with revolutions, but with small reforms that never stop. For the Social Democrats, in order to have what we call now European Union, we should form an assembly that write down a constitution. Because from the constitution, which is the highest law possible, you can derive all the rest. You see, it's a completely different way to go to the same goal. As you know, we do not have a constitution, so the Catholics won. These are the main steps of the European Union language policy. As I told you, the Catholics won. We have the Treaty of Paris, the Treaty of Rome, the Treaty of Maastricht. You can see the dates by yourself. And then we have a stop when there were the referendum for the European Constitution. That was the first big stop, 2005. And if you look to the language policy in parallel, you see that the dates are very, very closer one to the other, because language policy is a mirror of the equilibrium between the people and their power. People who belong to a powerful group, they have powerful languages. So, in 1951, there was this Treaty of Paris that established the first nucleus of collaboration between states in the continent. UK was out. I want to recall that Winston Churchill said, yes, you should do the United States of Europe without us, of course. That was his idea. He didn't think that Britain should be part of Europe, because he thought that that could harm the leadership in the Commonwealth and the relations with the United States. 2 years later, they started to think about the Treaty of Rome. And the first thing was, which language should we use? In which language should we write down the treaty? That was the question. And one colleague of mine, Sokolowska, could access these documents only in 2003, I think, which is exactly 50 years after they were written, because they were closed. Okay, they were secret. And it's very interesting because there were discussions about to have bilingualism English-French. Why? Because the English and the French won the war. Simply. And in this discussion, the German delegate was not happy. But what he can do? Could he do? He could not foster German in 1953. No, you could not, for political reasons. Okay. So, he proposed Esperanto. And, of course, they didn't decide anything, so they could put all the languages in. And that's why, in the first treaty, in the first article of the Treaty of Rome, we have the official regime that we have now. I want only to tell you, because time flies, that regional and minority languages, the chart was made exactly 1 year before the Treaty of Maastricht that established the European Union, and it is based exactly on the principle of subsidiarity. Minority languages are under the umbrella of member states, not under the umbrella of the European Union, because otherwise you do not have anymore an agreement between member states, but you will have something different with a regional level that will change everything. All right, so that's not more important. I want to highlight to you only one thing, which is a survey by the Ombudsman about multilingualism. Do you know what the Ombudsman is? Raise your hand. Okay, few people, and I know the people also, but in person. Most of them work in the European Union, so institutions. Okay, the Ombudsman is like civic defenders of your rights. If you think that your rights are violated, you can write this woman. And sometimes this woman collects all the complaints and makes us ask the people to do things, to their opinion. And this was a survey about multilingualism in the institutions of the EU. Okay, you will have afterwards the slides, so I will not go to translate that. I took also the Slovak part, of course, because it was translated in Slovak. And the main point is that she received only 286 answers in total. Do you know how many citizens are in the European Union? More than 500 million. This is nothing. Nobody cares. And with a very important exception, this is the official data of how many European citizens are. And the answers come in 19 official languages, but also in one answer in Latin, one in Esperanto, one in Catalan. And I can tell you that the Esperanto speakers answers a lot compared to the others. So it's a bit a pity, but language policy is still something that is not considered important, prioritized in the agenda of the citizens. We don't talk about that. And that's a pity, I think. And maybe the role of the polyglots is also to make non-polyglots aware of the fact that speaking languages is not a neutral fact, politically speaking. It's something that has a lot of political consequences. And I think that more or less we have everything. I can only tell you as final words that the Social Democrats didn't want that, let's say, ideological standpoint, but nowadays this idea of putting step-by-step small reforms of Europe, I think that does not work so much. We are in a situation in which we need something more radical, I think, more fast. Either we want to go, we cannot go on the usual way. That's the result of the European elections, I think. And it's also a very exciting moment, because after the 90s, this is, I'm going to close, after the 90s, this is the moment in history in which the political sentiment for or against Europe is very, very high. So we can again talk about that, having democratic discussion and trying to find a way to improve this angle of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a few questions. Please send more questions if you want to by Slido. And please have a look at the questions on the list already and vote for the ones that you would like me to ask. So the first question on the list is from Robert. Do you think that after Brexit, English should be replaced, for example, by German, which is going to become the language of the most speakers in the EU?
Oh, this is a very, very nice question. So, there is no possibility of replacing one language with the other, because officially speaking, German and English are on the same level with Irish and Maltese. Officially speaking, they are equal. Of course, there are some languages that are more equal than others. I do not think that after Brexit, English will be kicked out. For the first for practical reason, the European Central Bank works in English, first, even if it's in Frankfurt. Second reason is that formally, it is still the language of Ireland and Malta. So it is an official language. The Germans seem not to want to push the language up. Most probably, in the corridors of Brussels, French will be more used. That's my guessing, but I'm not a magician, as I told you.
Thank you. Someone has asked, what about Latin as an official EU language?
This is a very nice question. So the idea of Latin is similar to the idea of Esperanto, meaning that it is neutral from an ethnic point of view, nobody is native speaker of Latin, and nobody is real native speaker of Esperanto, which is a bit more complicated, but let's put this on one side. The idea is to have a neutral language. But to have a neutral language, that does not mean to have yet another official language. What you mean is, to add another level. You have the official languages here, and you have regional minority languages here. And you want to have something more. If you want to have something more, please, before that, you have to establish a new setting of the European Union as the United States of Europe. Because language policy follows politics. It's not the reverse.
Great. Is the EU policy of translating huge amounts of internal communications and documents into 20-something languages still a sensible policy in the 21st century?
I don't think so. The 24 languages can work quite well in the corridors. So on the institutional level, it's not a big problem. I mean, if you calculate the costs, there is peanuts compared to agriculture, for example. It's nothing. But that's not the point. The point is that Europe, a European Union, does not finish in the corridors of Brussels. So, what are the languages that our kids learn in school, for example? So there is a lot of public space in which languages play an important role, and some languages are much more important than others, and this has a lot of consequences. So in this sense, we should improve our awareness of language policy in order not to limit ourselves to the corridors in the European Union sites, but also on the other levels. And this is against the principle of subsidiarity, and that is the big problem. Because national states say, okay, my educational policy, it's not your concern, dear Brussels, it's my concern.
I think I have a related question here.
Please.
What about the linguistic rights of EU citizens? Ordinary people have real difficulties in learning national languages. Could Esperanto help? I think this is a loaded question. Yeah,
that's a lot. First, I completely agree that linguistic rights are constantly violated. Constantly. If you want to gain a good job, in the EU, please be a native speaker of English, otherwise you will not win. There is a lot, there's an unfair advantage there. And this is this secret, is the elephant in the room. So this only one example. There are a lot of examples, there are a lot of complaints about that, but you know, they seem not to care. Esperanto could play a role, yes, absolutely, if we are aware of that. Of course, Esperanto is not panacea, it's not the solution of everything. It should be one key part of a general strategy of language policy. For example, here, it's something missing, which is sign languages. Sign language has no rights, and this is terrible, okay? And also, the languages of migrants has no rights. There is no clear right of keeping your heritage. If you move, people move more and more in Europe. And to have balanced personalities, you should accept the fact that you have more than one national identity in many cases. The idea of nation states having only one uniformed linguistic identity is something very recent. And if you talk to my colleagues from the corridors of anthropology, they say that normally human beings are multilingual in history. So monolingualism is a defect, it's not the default. So Esperanto can play a role, of course, but we should be very, very careful about that in order to do something, well, good planning. Because sometimes my dear fellow Esperanto speakers are a bit naive. They say, okay, let's put Esperanto and everything will be solved. No, again, we are not magicians, we live not in Harry Potter world. Okay, this is the real world, and the world is damn complex.
So another related question from Funcano: would Esperanto have a similar effect on linguistic diversity as Newspeak in George Orwell's 1984?
Oh, that's nice. Oh, unfortunately, I don't have the time to explain why Newspeak is related to Esperanto, because it's a very nice story. But maybe with a coffee, I can tell you in private. I don't think so, because so Esperanto is not a limitation to think like Newspeak. Nobody could really control Esperanto. People, very bad people, Hitler and Stalin tried to do so, and they failed. They tried to kill Esperanto, killing the speakers. And there are still speakers now, so I'm quite confident that nobody really can control Esperanto.
And in the interests of linguistic diversity in the questions, there is a question in Esperanto, but ĉar mi ne parolas Esperanton, you can read this one.
Ironie, ĉu ne estus pli juste kaj egale se la funkcia unia lingvo ne apartenus al neniu de la membraj landoj, kiel nun la angla. Ironically, will not be more fair and egalitarian if the functional union language will not belong to any of the member states as now English. Yes, in both languages it's the same word.
And a practical question, I think this might be the last one we have time for. Who can complain to the ombudsman or ombudswoman of the EU? Can organisations or also private persons?
Both private persons and organisation. I wrote as a private person, and there are some associations that send, and even regional governments and national governments can do. So everybody. Yes, please. It's very nice. Also, it's very clear. The website is written in all 24 official languages of the EU. So please take advantage of that. She's paid by our taxes. Okay.
That's a very practical end point. Thank you very much for the talk. Thank you for coming, and I'm sure you're happy to take some more questions later in person if people would like.
Thank you again. Danke.